from the get-go with my story was it was the solution to my problem. Like, it was the solution to me dealing with those uncomfortable feelings. And a lot of people find it really hard to have that uncomfortable feeling. They want to feel like they're always on life. They're always, really happy, but that's just not life. Like, you're going to feel these feelings. And the only way to actually change that is by feeling them. So, when I got sober, I learned that I have a thinking problem. And the way that I need to change is by changing my thinking. So even in life coaching and neurolinguistic programming, we learn about rewiring the brain, because it's about how we deal with the actual issue that's going on. So my perspective of things changed. So now when I have a problem, I don't look at it as a problem, I look at it as a lesson.
Hi, my name is Johnny Lawrence and welcome to another episode of Life Talk, the self-development podcast. Today's episode is going to be amazing. I have been looking forward to speaking to this person for a really long time. Today I'll be speaking to a wonderful lady named Lauren White. Lauren is a life coach. She's a motivational speaker. She's an addictions counselor, and she is the co-host with Fabian Cowdrey. Cowdrey, is that right? Yeah, good.
Yep.
Sorry, Fabian, if that's wrong. She's the co-host with him on the podcast, Between the Ears podcast. How are you today, Lauren?
I'm good. Each day's been, just mold into one. I get to this point where you can see that I get tired because I'm up very early, but, I'm counting my blessings and I'm very grateful, to be alive and to be healthy. And, I'm excited for this talk. I think it will really, more than anything, help other people, but also help myself. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Well, that's the thing about self-development. It's not called self-completion, is it? It's called self-development because it's an ongoing journey all the time. And it doesn't always surprise you, the places and the people that you get value from. It's not always who you think it's going to be, is it? Could just be someone in the queue behind you in the supermarket that says something to you and you're like, huh. It's just like that's really profound. Thank you, guy in supermarket. So what's your morning been like? Okay, you've been up early?
Yeah, so I got up at 6 a.m. and I'm that crazy person that decided to walk and run into work about 2.5 hours.
Wow.
I like at the moment, just like, I'm a big fan of nature. For anyone that doesn't go through nature, get yourself out there. I'm really enjoying just walking in the Thames, around the Thames, kind of just getting, out of, my head. So that 2.5 hour walk actually really helps me. Got into work, been doing some emails, been doing some social media stuff, been doing because I do marketing at a gym, and just kind of just sitting there and just kind of just connecting however I can, especially at this time, because I think a lot of people are finding it hard to really just stay in the moment and just enjoy the present moment. So for me, it's like, I'm trying to do the next best thing that's going to make me feel good. And usually in the evening, I do nothing, which is so nice because that's just I think for me, that's my self-care.
Yeah, that's really lovely. I mean, does that experience in nature, is that what brings you into the moment, would you say?
100%. I mean, It sounds really weird, but when I was 18, I got introduced to my recovery program, which obviously I'll go into, but they talked about a higher power and a spirituality kind of aspect of the world. I found, it's really strange, but I found in my journey that my higher power is nature. Because always for me, every time I get myself out of myself and get myself out into the world and what's around me and staying, in that mindfulness process, I've always felt at one with myself. And it is, if you can go out and you can just really stay in that present moment, you can realize that you can do anything if you just literally just feel like this is where it's meant to be at this moment in time, rather than constantly going into the future, going in tomorrow, constantly in your head and then constantly in the past. So I really do enjoy that. And it always takes me outside of those self-limiting beliefs that I have going on.
I really resonate with that. Really do resonate with that. There's a groundingness to being out in nature. There's a humbleness to being out in nature. There's sort of like nature doesn't care. Doesn't care. It would just show you what it shows you, you know. And yeah, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. And I think that's incredible that you've worked that out, because there are people that get really, really late in life and don't work that out. So that's incredible.
I generally feel like how I kind of came to terms with that was because I suffered really badly with depression. Where I would wake up and I'd just be constantly sad, and I'd be consumed in my thoughts, I'd be consumed in my feelings, I'd be consumed in my head, and I just wouldn't leave my bed. And all these thoughts and feelings I had, which weren't reality, they were just, you know, things in my head, you know, would define my day. And it would, you know, it would automatically, I would say, alter my day into, you know, if I had a feeling of, oh, I'm not good enough, or, oh, no one likes me, or, oh, you know, I had an eating disorder growing up, so I'm fat. It would make me feel like I don't want to get out of bed, or I don't want to see anyone. And when I started to do the opposite of that and just get myself out there and just literally just see the world for what it is rather than in my head, I became much happier as a person. And it was the best thing I ever did. So to anyone listening right now, like if you ever have those type of feelings, just get yourself out there and go for a walk. I think it would help you so much.
I mean, it's funny, isn't it? Because advice like that I've seen given and have taken myself, and it sounds so simple. And what I've come to realize in this self-development journey is that it quite often is simple. It's
all simple.
It's us that complicates it every single time. It's usually a combination of some form of external, information, whether it be Instagram or televisions or people or anything like that. So it's about, like you say, that time you spend in nature, blocking everything else out and getting back in touch with what's true. I can fully imagine why that, well, I can understand why that helps you. So yeah, really happy for you on that one. Okay, so for those people that haven't come across you yet, would you mind just talking a bit about yourself and your journey? Because you've got a very sort of colourful, I suppose, story, haven't you? Filled with lots of ups and downs, and from what I hear and from what I've read, some very painful lessons. So would you mind talking about that?
Of course. I mean, I always love going back to my story. And you know what the funny thing is every time I share my story, I share something different. And every time I hear it, it's like something else comes out, and or something else I learn about myself. And anyway, long story short, I'm a Jewish Northwest London girl from pretty much, you know, a very kind of normal upbringing. Two brothers and a sister. From Hertfordshire, and you know, on the outside I had everything. Growing up, I went to a private school. My parents gave me everything materialistically. They gave me the love that they could have given me growing up, so I was very close to my family. But there was a lot of trauma in my childhood that affected me when I was younger. But it wasn't just the trauma in my childhood, it was also, you know, my low self-esteem. So whenever I do talks, I don't really talk about, you know, the substances that I picked up. I talked about the feelings that made me feel the way that I felt underneath. So a lot of people can relate, because someone, you know, may have never picked up food, or may have never picked up drugs, but they've all felt the feeling of loneliness, sadness. They've all felt the feeling of being less than, or low self-esteem, low self-worth. And that's what I kind of had at a young age. But I also had, you know, this negative mentality, because for some reason, growing up, there was always something negative happening around me. You know, at the age of 11, I battled, my mum had breast cancer, and I found that very difficult. At the age of 15, my brother went into rehab from an alcohol issue. Then my mum had an alcohol issue. So I had alcoholism in my family growing up. And at the age of 18, my baby brother had cancer. So I had a lot of things going on in my childhood that were very, like, you know, constantly consuming me. And I think the way that I dealt with it was this kind of like, well, fuck it. You know, if you had my problems, you do the things that I would do. And I rebelled, because I thought that was the only way to deal with it, you know. And because I had this negative mentality and this low self-esteem, you know, the minute I picked up alcohol from the age of 11, or I picked up drugs, that was it. I was off and running. Like, it was like, that was my solution to my problem, because I didn't have to worry about my mum being in hospital. I didn't have to worry about, you know, X, Y, and Z. And at that time, it was my solution. And I always say this to people, like, it worked. It worked for a period of time. It really did. And that's why a lot of people, when they start drinking and they're not addicted to it, they're okay. And then it gets to a progressive illness where they're like, they want to go back to that first time they've ever drunk. Yeah. You're never going to go back to that first time. It just gets worse and worse and worse. And from the ages 11 to the age of 18, because what was happening was, you know, my self-esteem was going down. My sense of self-worth was going, I kind of lost my identity. The more I was, you know, picking up substances to change the way I felt, the more low I felt about myself. And in that time, the funny thing is that I tried to make you look at me like I was this most perfect person. So, you know, I grew up being like, okay, well, if I get a house and a car, I'd be happy. Or if I get a boyfriend, I'll be happy. Or if I get a job, I'd be happy. So, you know, I modeled at a young age. I was working in clubs surrounding myself around celebrities and well-known people. I, you know, had a boyfriend, and all these external factors, which I think is so important to talk about, because, you know, you see all these celebrities that end up, you know, God forbid, you know, taking their life, and you think, you know, they've got these amazing lives, but it's never really about the outside. You know, everyone is struggling with something on the inside. And if you don't work on your inside, then you can't be happy on the outside, which is something why I'm so passionate around mental health. And I love working with people that have, you know, high pressure jobs, that, you know, made loads of money and had really successful, you know, things out of it. But also there's always going to be this eternal thing inside. If you put a lot of pressure on yourself to be a certain way, you're scared to fit in. Deep down, you know, you have this like mentality around not taking a break and burning out, which is quite, you know, big in London. And that's the kind of way that I was for so many years. So, you know, drinking was a funny one, because when I drank and did drugs, people would think that I was this like party girl that had, you know, the life. And I was living this life, when really every single night I was going home and just basically drowning myself in alcohol and drugs and bulimia and, you know, anything to change the way I felt. And it wasn't until I was 18 that it got to a point where, you know, everyone has a rock bottom, and I had so many rock bottoms, but my main rock bottom was, I was lucky enough to have my mum, who's sober, my brother, who's about 15 years sober, changed his life around, incredible guy. And I remember walking around my house, hating myself so much. And it wasn't about the substance. It was about the person that I became. And I hated myself becoming that person. And I couldn't look at myself in the mirror. I was angry. I was negative. I was moody. I bloody didn't want to be around anyone. I hated everyone, because why would I love anyone? Because I hated myself. And I remember looking around and being like, you know, seeing my family members and seeing, you know, how they changed their life around and how happy they were, and having this sense of clarity and sense of serenity and like this sense of, you know, peace. And I just said to myself, I want what they have, and I need that. And, you know, I spent my whole life from those years trying to have one thing. And the one thing I wanted was happiness. And it's almost like I fucked it up, because I self-sabotage into that whole, oh my God, this is going to make me happy, and this is going to make me happy, and this is going to make me happy. But like you said, going back to the simplicity of it, you know, stripping back who Lauren really is this girl that just wants love and acceptance. So going back to acceptance, which is something we're going to talk about.
It is.
And it's literally this thing about, you know, I spent my whole life trying to fit in and trying to, you know, become this person that I wasn't. And really in the process, I lost myself. So at 18, sorry,
No, I mean, what that reminds me of is this proverb I heard about a student asking a sensei, you know, if I work the hardest I can, how long will it take me to reach enlightenment? And the sensei pauses and says, 1,000 years. And then he says, okay, what if I work twice as hard? And then Sensei says 2,000 years. And it just reminds me of that, like all of that effort to create something and it didn't work, you know? And it was only when you stopped the effort and you just, you know, that you finally sort of realized what you were in for. And another thing that I really took from what you just said was really resonated with me was when you said, I wasn't interested in what the substances were. I was interested in what the feelings were. And what that makes me think of is, you know, you imagine two people having a disagreement, and let's say the disagreement manifests in between them as some sort of monster. Now, if either one of us go towards this monster, we're going to meet the monster, right? It looks scary. It looks terrifying. And what you did was genius, because you just went around the monster and you said, what am I feeling? Why am I feeling it? Let's deal with that. Let's not deal with the monster. So many people at moments of anger or issue, they try to meet the monster head on, you know? I just think what you did is genius, absolute genius.
Oh, thank you. And do you know what? I'm so blessed, and I have to, you know, I mean, I always think people should celebrate their wins, but you know, getting honest at the age of 18 and coming to the conclusion that, you know, it's not really about anything other than standing up to my own self-worth and saying, I don't need to do this anymore. So if anyone, you know, what I see is a lot of people doing is they, you know, they kind of justify it in their head.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I'm not drinking 20 million bottles a night. The person next to me is drinking more than me. You know, they wake up one day and they're fine, but it's not about that. It's about, are you living the best version of yourself that you can be? And, you know, I do think it's a progressive illness, especially with addiction. It doesn't get any worse. It doesn't get any better. It only just gets worse. And I had a choice at the age of 18 to either give up, go complete abstinence and get sober, or carry on and then end up, you know, let's just say I would end up 50 years old, heroin addicts on the side of the street, God knows, hating myself, not giving myself a chance to actually live my life. And I'm so lucky that I did it, because, you know, I could have been that girl that kind of said, oh, well, you know what, I've got another 10 years of drinking. I've got another 20 years of using. But what's the point? Was I living? No, I was just existing day by day, hating myself in the process.
You're
so remarkable. What's the point?
You really are remarkable.
Oh, shush.
No, you are. No, you know what it is. You know what it is for me. It's, and I don't mean this in a derogatory way. It's your age. It's to work that out at such a young age. You know, like some people go a lot longer in life, if they ever figure it out at all. And I love that distinction again you made about, you know, because a lot of people go, oh, I'm not an alcoholic, so I'm okay. But actually, having problematic drinking can be worse in some cases, because, you know, you have the high functioning alcoholics, and the words you used were perfect. You said it's great until it's not. You know, and when it's not, it falls apart rather quickly, I just think. So anyway, so you're 18, and I interrupted you. Sorry, I was just wanted to.
No, it's fine. Yeah, I mean, this is the exciting part. I mean, everyone wants to know about Rehab, of course, what they see in like movies. But yeah, I checked into Rehab at 18. That was when the work really started for me. And I think that when I came in, because I had this element of ego and pride, because ego and pride is driven by insecurity and a protection to stop myself from getting vulnerable. I went in with this kind of mentality of like, you know, I want to get well, but, you know, I'm still going to drink when I want to, and I'm still going to, you know, do beauty pageants, all these things that were affecting me, because I also had an eating disorder as well. And I remember going in and kind of, you know, learning that the only way to deal with it is by feeling your feelings. And then I remember sitting down and doing group therapy, and therapists turning around to me and saying to me, you need to get honest, like you need to get humble, you need to stop having this ego of like, you know, because I had this identity of like, look at me, I'm Lauren White, I'm sick, I'm working in clubs, and I have friends that are celebrities and well-known people. Like that's the way that I lived, because that was my identity. I can straight up say that now, that was my ego. And and didn't do me justice. It was just, I believe that vulnerability is strength. I believe the only way we connect with people is by getting honest and showing our true selves, which
Nice.
I've learned over the years, So if I'm having a bad day, I turn around to say to someone, I'm having a bad day. If someone asks me what I do, I don't even tell them what I do on the external, because that's not who I am. I am Lauren. Like, I'm not like Lauren White works in the gym or as a life coach. Like, I am Lauren. Like, that doesn't define me. But how I described rehab was, it was like a baby's bottle taking away from its baby. Like, every single thing got stripped off me, and I had to go raw and deep into who Lauren is and what she wants in her life. And it was one of the most eye-opening things ever, because when I walked into rehab, I couldn't look at anyone in the eye. I couldn't hug anyone. And that's the type of person that I became. And I was angry. And then I had to kind of just let it go and just let, my life unfold, and understand that, not everything's going to go my way. Sometimes I won't, succeed in things. But at the end of the day, like, it's okay. Like, life is all about accepting that, it is what it is. And I have a choice today. So I read something today around, like you said, acceptance around, like, if there's something in front of us that we don't like, we just have to accept it, because it is what it is. We cannot control any external factor, people, place, and things, which I learned at a young age. We can't control it. All we can do is change ourselves and how we react to it. So, if I have a problem now in any situation, shape, and form, I sit down and I acknowledge it, and I say to myself, okay, well, I can either go for it or go against it. I can either fuck up my life and just abuse myself in the process, or I can sit there and just deal with it and be present, because I was never present. Like, when I was in addiction, when my baby brother was ill, when I found that he had cancer, the first thing I did was drink. The first thing I did was go clubbing. Was I present? No, I was selfish in my illness. And that was a selfish illness. Unfortunately, addiction is a selfish illness. Whereas now, going through my mum having cancer, I was able, as a daughter, as a sister, to go home this weekend and be present for them. I'm not perfect, but I know I have that awareness to make that choice. And I think awareness is the most important thing when it comes to anything in your life.
It's not about being perfect though, is it? It's about being real and showing up. And that sounds to me like what you're doing. You're like, listen, I'm Lauren, and this is what I'm going to do. It's not perfect, but it's me. and it sounds to me like you're holding yourself accountable for who you are. And I can certainly say, from what I'm sat here witnessing, it's quite a special person, if I'm honest.
Oh, thank you.
As I said to you before, addiction and acceptance, they're two profound words that put them together, and it's a real magic conversation. I spoke to you before we pressed record and asked you if you'd heard of the work of Gabon Mate, and you hadn't got round to that yet. Just so people know, he wrote a book called In the Realm of Hungry Ghosts, Close Encounters with Addiction. And in that book, he gives a definition of addiction. And I'm going to read it, because otherwise I'll forget. I'll say it wrong. I always do. I'm one of those people that tells the punchline in jokes and then just gives up halfway through.
I'm so bad as well.
Yeah, I just thought I would just read it. So it's any behavior that any person finds temporary pleasure or relief in, and therefore craves, suffers negative consequences as a result of it, and yet cannot give it up despite the negative consequences.
I love that definition. It's on point.
It is. And what he also goes on to say as well is that he doesn't define the addiction by the substance or choice, what you're addicted to, because people can be addicted to anything.
Anything.
It could be alcohol, it could be drugs, it could be sex, it could be shopping, it could be gaming,
social media,
absolutely, Instagram. But he says, he strongly suggests that almost all addictions are born from trauma, and that addiction is a brain illness. What do you think about that?
I completely agree. I mean, I did a master's in addiction psychology. I actually remember being 13, 14 years old, and obviously my cousin was a heroin addict. Her sister, well, she took her life, but her sister was also a heroin addict. She's sober now. She's 15, 16 years sober. Obviously, I had family and addiction that I witnessed. And I remember being 14 years old. And I remember I was at assembly at school and a policeman came in or a drugs line came in or whatever. And I remember like there was like about 1,000 people in the school hall. And I remember putting my hand up and going, is it hereditary? And even at a young age, I kind of had this whole thing around, you know, addiction being, you know, genetic, environmental, but also it bring, you know, a brain disease. But when I did my master's, I mean, the first question I asked was, what is addiction? And I think that was the first essay I answered, what is addiction? And he said to me, there's no right or wrong answer. There's a lot of different beliefs. But I know that it is, and I do believe it is a brain disorder. And I do believe it is an illness. And it's funny because I'm one of 4, and each individual of all of our siblings have been through exactly the same thing, but one has ended up, like 2 have ended up an addict and 1 hasn't, you know. And I think you are born into that. That's the way your brain is wired. Like, I know that I have an addictive personality. If I pick up gym, I'm gymming. If I pick up food, I'm fooding. Like, it is just the way that I'm wired as a person. But I genuinely believe that trauma is a massive part of it. And environment as well is a part of it. But that doesn't mean that with environment, you know, you're going to be an addict. I just think it's more likely you're going to, you know, if you're homeless and you're on the side of the street and you don't have any money, you're more likely to pick up drugs and alcohol. But that doesn't mean you'll become addicted to it.
No. Have you heard that story told? Again, I first heard it in Gabon Mati's book about the what war was it? Vietnam War. Do you hear that one? No, where basically a large, and I'm going to butcher the statistics, so I won't even try. But apparently a large percentage of soldiers that fought in the Vietnam War became addicted to heroin due to it being out there and things. And when they came back, and now I might not be right in this quote, in this statistic, but it's something like 90% of them were managed to get off of heroin. And what they attribute it to is environment. They come, you know, when they were in Vietnam, the drugs were there. They were in a stressful environment, so trauma was everywhere, and the heroin did what it was supposed to do. It took that pain away, you know, because that's what trauma is. It's unresolved pain, right? It's a pain inside you, and that doesn't have to be something dramatic, you know.
Yeah.
It can be something seemingly harmless at the time, you know, like you know, a parent tells you you're not good at singing or something, you know. I don't know, but
it could be anything.
It really can.
Yeah.
That's why, you know, it's terrifying as a parent. I'm trying to be so to the point where I don't even want to talk to my children in case I traumatize them. I'm just like, oh, I don't know what to say.
Be like,
yeah. They're like, Dad, you're traumatizing me by not talking to me. I'm like, I can't get it right. But like, you know, as soon as they come back from Vietnam and they're around their families and they're in different scenarios and they have to go back to quote unquote normal life, they didn't have a need for the substance anymore. And I think that's what you hear around addiction and recovery. It's like the addiction part, the abstinence part, not drinking or not smoking or not whatever. That bit in essence shouldn't be difficult, but if you put alongside the recovery part of it, the reason why you do it, that's where the real hard work is. And what I heard from you there was, you know, as soon as I stopped doing those things, I had these feelings that I didn't like, and I wasn't able to use the normal mechanisms, and I didn't know what to do. It must have been a very, very hard moment.
Yeah, they say in recovery, you get your feelings back, but you get your feelings back. And like I said, it's true. Like I said from the get-go with my story, it was the solution to my problem. Like, it was the solution to me dealing with those uncomfortable feelings. And a lot of people find it really hard to have that uncomfortable feeling. They want to feel like they're always on life. They're always, you know, really happy, but that's just not life. Like, you're going to feel these feelings. And the only way to actually change that is by feeling them. So, you know, when I got sober, I learned that I have a thinking problem. And the way that I need to change is by changing my thinking. So even in life coaching and neurolinguistic programming, we learn about rewiring the brain, because it's about how we deal with the actual issue that's going on. So like, my perspective of things changed. So now when I have a problem, I don't look at it as a problem. I look at it as a lesson. I look at it as an experience. I look at it as something to learn from. I look at it in a different way that's going to change me. But also in that process, what happens is that I'm rebuilding my life and I'm rebuilding my thought process. I'm also rebuilding my self-esteem and my self-worth. And this is how a lot of recovering addicts get sober, because they start to rebuild themselves and they start to forgive themselves and they start to detach themselves from the past, and they go into this whole thing around, how can I start to find out who I am and my purpose and my passion? So I went from this really depressed, down, low self-esteem, low self-worth person. And what happens is low self-worth is linked to people pleasing and peer pressure and substance abuse. Because the more low you feel in yourself, the more you're most likely going to pick up substances. But when you start to grow your self-esteem and your self-worth and assert your wants and your needs, and you start to get to this place of, actually, I don't need that. And that's why 8 years on being sober, if someone turns around to me and say, do you want a drink? I say no, because I know what I'm good at. I know what I'm, who I am. I know what, is going to make me feel good and not make me feel good. But that's because I've worked on myself to get to that place. So it actually does, the work proper starts when you start to actually, really just do therapy around it and go through, like, I went through the 12 steps. I did a lot of DBT. I did a lot of like mindfulness stuff. I did a lot of radical acceptance. I don't know if you know anything about that, but it's like accepting, like you said. And now it's like, when I started to rebuild myself, none of that stuff just appeals to me.
Yeah. They say, I've heard it said, like, with drinkers, if you want to know why you drink, stop drinking.
Oh my God, yeah.
And it's
I say that to my clients. I'm like, if you want to go out there, please feel free.
Yeah.
Go out there.
Yeah. Yeah. It's fascinating. You're fascinating. You really are. Another person who has an interesting perspective is Johann Hari, and he speaks about the link between environments and human connection as a route to addiction. And he specifically focuses on human connection. He's saying, I think he does a TED talk, and he says, we don't have an addiction problem, we have a connection problem. What do you think around that?
I agree. Completely agree. I mean, substances or addictions are not really, I would say, let me try and word this, like, substances and addiction is a way to avoid our feelings, but also avoid connection. It's a way to cover up, the vulnerability, because getting close to someone, intimacy is like, it's terrifying.
Yeah.
And that's why a lot of people are on their phones all the time, because they're scared to get intimate. They're scared to really say how it is and just, really, feel those feelings of what's going on between the connection between the two. But I think that he's right. But I also think that rejection and abandonment are huge parts of it. A lot of people are scared just to be rejected, are scared to be alone. And that's why humans need to pick up something, wherever it is. And addictions, like you said, can be anything. I can be obsessively thinking in my head about a word. That's an addiction.
Yeah.
I can obsessively be thinking about what I want for dinner. That's, OCD is like, all of these things, they all stem through patterns of behaviors and habits. But it's all a way to not feel the real connection and present moment. And I do agree that connection is the best way of taking yourself outside yourself. And also there's a huge interlink in depression and connection. And a lot of people, when they get themselves into depression, they just cut themselves off and they isolate.
Yep.
And the minute you start to do the opposite of your thinking and start to connect, like in lockdown, you pick up the phone to someone. Even now, like, you've changed my day. Like, I was like feeling a bit, and having that connection, it changes you. So it's so important, and there's a huge link with it.
Well, the two words that came to mind there. One you said, which was rejection, which again, another answer to rejection. There's a road to acceptance again, isn't it? Accepting something, accepting that maybe in that rejection, it's not about you, it's about the other person potentially.
Yep.
But also shame.
Oh my God,
Shame.
Brene Brown.
Yeah. Oh, don't get me started on Brene Brown. You say her name, I get goosebumps.
I love her.
She is. But shame is. It can't. What is it? She talks about with the petri dish. It can't survive with. It can't survive when it's outed. Is that what she says? Something like that. When you expose shame. So if I'm feeling shame about something, it's only shame when it's in me. As soon as I tell you about it, it stops being shame. And I think that, again, it comes down to that communication, that connection, right?
Well, shame is linked to rejection, isn't it? Because shame is I learned this in rehab, that shame and guilt is completely different. Guilt is like a moralistic thing where, we got taught at a young age, like, do not kill. And that's just innate in me. So the minute I kill, I feel guilty, but that's more about me. Whereas shame is like, I'm scared that you're going to find out. Like, I'm shameful. Like, like, it sounds so strange, but it was so easy for me to come out and say that I was a drug addict and alcoholic. I thought that was really cool. And they glamorize that a lot. I don't know why, but they glamorize it a lot. You see it a lot in America. But I found it really hard for me to tell people that I was bulimic. And I had a lot of shame around it because it wasn't as glamorized. And to tell people that you were throwing up is just not nice. And I had a lot of shame around it. And then when I started to identify myself as a bulimic and just get honest about it and just say, well, this is who I am, and even get honest about my past, it takes the power out of it. And now I just don't have any shame at all. I think the more you start to talk about your truth, and I'm really honest about this stuff, and I share about it a lot on my social media, the minute you talk about your truth and just say it how it is, the more you learn to accept yourself for the good and the bad and the ugly, because it's who you are. The more you go away from that and you're going into this whole like, oh, I'm not accepting myself for my truth, the more your self-esteem is going to go down, your self-worth is going to go down, you're going to lose your identity, and then you're going to feel shit about yourself because you're keeping secrets. And my mum always said to me from a young age, secrets keep us sick. Always.
Man. Wow. Gosh.
Oh, mum.
Yeah. Well, you're like a Yoda today. There's I think it's Brene Brown that says something about, is it shame and guilt? And it's like, one is I feel shame, the other is I am shameful.
Yeah,
or something like that. But I mean, let's get on to acceptance, shall we? We've been skirting around with the acceptance. Here's the question: what does acceptance mean to you?
I'm going to tell you the story that I said to someone today, which was an epiphany in my life. I mean, the first thing I would say is that my mum always said to me, so my mum was like my mentor growing up, and my mum always said to me, like, accept, like at the back of the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, there's actually a story called Acceptance is the Answer. And I remember reading that because I couldn't understand why, all these things in my life were not working. Even when I got sober, like I generally thought that my life was going to be perfect when I got sober, because I thought that, if I give up drinking and I give up, my substances, I'd be this like amazing person, and I'd be, not having any problems. And that was it. That was not true. Like, I still have shit. I still have down days. Like I said, I took away the substance, but I had to deal with me and life. And she always said to me, like, acceptance. The only way you're going to live your life is by accepting. And when I was in Bali, and I went to Bali for like a AA recovery convention, I had some really bad news about a family member. And I remember crying on the beach and just really, really being upset about it, and just turning around to someone that I know, being like, I just don't understand. Like, I can't accept it. I can't, like, it's just, how can this happen? And she said to me, you don't have to like it to accept it, but it is what it is. Acceptance is understanding that life will always throw you obstacles, left, right, and center. And you have a choice today. to either run for your life or deal with it. And my whole life was running away. Like I'd run away, like drink, drugs, whatever, food. And it never took away the actual issue. I'd always wake up, the issue would still be there. Unfortunately, in any situation, what you need to do when it comes to these things is just have faith. And God and any spirituality in my life has helped so much. I'm not saying you guys should go open up, a Bible or whatever, but having that faith that everything is where it's meant to be at this moment in time is so important. And everything we go through is just an experience and a lesson. And most of the time, if you go from now to like 20 years ago, you look back and you're like, everything made sense. If it wasn't for what I went through in my life, I wouldn't be where I am today. If it wasn't for that, then it wouldn't have made me the person I am. If it wasn't for this, this, and this, and this is what life is about. And if you can use it as, just, understanding rather than, just kind of going against it, you can just accept it. So like it's so important to have that self-belief in yourself as well. Like, if I go for a job interview, let's just say, for example, and I don't get it, it fucks my self-esteem. It makes me feel shit about myself. And I can't accept it because I'm like, oh no, how dare you? Or if a guy breaks up with me or whatever. But there's a choice you have today, whether to just believe in yourself and go, okay, well, that wasn't my path. That wasn't what I was meant to be. And this is where it goes back to your thinking and your perspective and your belief system, because the way that you think is so important. Yeah. So important.
Just when you say beliefs, values and beliefs, that's my thing. I think a lot of things come back to that. Values and beliefs is our training, isn't it? It's what we believe in. It's who we are. It's who we say we are. It's all them things, So yeah, absolutely.
Hope that helps. Any of those answers?
Absolutely, all of them. No, I mean, for me as well, it's about not having to know why. Sometimes you don't have to know why. Sometimes things just happen and you just need to accept them as they are. And what that's helped me with is things like my children. Like they're unhappy about something. They're supposed to be unhappy about this. This is a lesson. This I need to now honor that experience for them. I need to stay with them in that experience. I don't need to try and take it away or change it or fix it. I just need to be with them in that experience. And
100%.
I need to allow them to go through them emotions and know that they're okay. And I'm there with them, My son was having a moment like that on Sunday. He had a bit of a F the government moment. He was fed up with the government.
I love that.
He's only 9, but he was like, they keep saying life's going to go back to normal, and I'm frustrated. And if I'm completely honest, everything he was saying was right. He was absolutely right. It's frustrating. Everyone is frustrated. I had no advice for him, no wisdom, no nothing. I just had to sit with him and say, you know what, son, you're right. And, I'm going to sit with you and I'm just going to give you, do you want a cuddle? And we had a cuddle. And he kept getting into one about it, coming back for a cuddle, and it was just about not trying to provide an answer, because I don't have one. I don't have one. I accept that he's feeling this way, and it's not my job to fix it. And the other thing as well is about accepting that nothing is permanent. Going back to that, I think, what did you say? People, places, and
things.
They're not permanent. We buy a house. Someone lived in it before us. Someone will live in it after us. We have a car. Maybe someone didn't drive it before you if it's brand new, if you're lucky that way. But someone may have it after you. And people, we all walk in and out of each other's life. Every single relationship in this planet has a beginning and an end. And that's hard to accept. Sometimes I went on a course and I met this person. We had a really great connection. We really got on, but we never see each other again. And that's okay. That's okay. You don't have to be besties because you had a great time on the course. Or it could be relationships. Sometimes you get with somebody for 10 years, 20 years, and that's it. That's all it was supposed to be. And you go off and you meet someone else, or you don't. So those two things, not having to understand why, and accepting that permanence isn't permanent. Things aren't permanent. You're a profound individual. I feel really blessed to have met you today, because this has been a wonderful conversation. If you were to give any advice to anybody about how they could practice or try or whatever it may be to get towards acceptance, what would that be?
I generally think that one should never put too much pressure on themselves to get everything right. And especially when it comes to self-development, like, put one foot in front of the other, like, do the 1%, don't do the 100%, and just take it day by day. Really take in what you want to take in, speak to people that, that you want to speak to, that are going to give you good advice. And just learn that, you have the choice to take in what you want to take in, with the wording that you give yourself, but remind yourself daily that, what we said, is what it is. Like, I have it tattooed on my arm saying, trust the process. Like, it is a process. It's a lifelong experience that we're gonna, one day, like, I had a bad week last week. Like, I'm gonna have a bad week. All right, cool. I had an amazing day today. Love the day that I'm having today. If I didn't have last week as a bad week, I wouldn't be able to enjoy today, because today is the most amazing day. And just see that life rides in waves. It's a wave. It's an obstacle. It's an obstacle that will, one day come crashing down in one day. But then, you'd always get up. You'd always get up. And as long as you believe in yourself, you just get up and just keep doing the best that you can do. And there's no such thing as perfection. Trust me. No such thing.
No. And I think you're absolutely right. It's that self-belief and just knowing, no matter what it is, that, because if you think about it, let's take someone like, I don't know, Dwayne Johnson. Had $7 in his pocket. Now I'm pretty sure he's got more than that.
Yeah.
And it's like, the level of self-belief. Oh, and don't get me wrong, there's other stuff, luck, hard work, all these different things that come into it, but you have to believe in yourself. Before anyone else. You shouldn't have to have other people tell you. You should be able to just find that within yourself first.
Anything else should be a bonus in your life. You just
Absolutely.
need to have that inner self belief, and the inner self-worth needs to come first before anything else. Yeah. Everything else external is a bonus, because if you don't love yourself from the inside, you can't enjoy anything on the outside. You may have everything on the outside, but you won't be able to enjoy it because you don't have that self kind of like that, that kind of self integrity and clarity around anything, if you get what I mean.
Yeah, I do. I mean, that spurs me to ask a question that I seem to ask a lot of people, actually, and that is, are you proud of yourself?
I'm so proud of myself.
Yes.
And I said this to my flatmate last night. I was just like, I spent so many years hating myself so much and putting myself down and downgrading myself. And I did have this thing around, even I had an ego, like I had this thing around, like, I would never show to people that I'm like, the shit, because I was scared that they would think that I was cocky and arrogant. And now I'm like, there's a difference between self-love and, ego. And I actually feel like now I'm proud of myself for what I'm doing. And I'm proud of myself, for becoming this person, because this is the person I've always wanted to be. And the more I learn to, like, be proud of myself and to celebrate my wins, the more you grow as a person. So I'm definitely proud of myself. And I think everyone should be proud of themselves, whatever they do in their lives.
You just made my day. You have just made my day. I love it. I love hearing people, because you are a special person, and you're touching a lot of lives for the positive. You're doing good work. I see you on live chats, having conversations, saying a lot of the same stuff, but I'm pretty sure every time you say it, a different person hears it who needs to hear it. And actually some 100%. Of the stuff and that's the thing, sometimes you're not ready to hear these things until you are, but when you do hear them and you're ready, it's magic. What's 3 things about yourself that you really love? Go on.
I love my resilience. I never give up. I love how I'm a very adaptable person. Like, I can adapt myself in situations, and even with people, like, I can literally walk into a room and just literally adapt myself. And
did you need alcohol for that before?
I thought I did.
Good.
Nice. For many years I thought I did. Yeah. And then I realized that when I grew my self-confidence myself, I started to grow who I am. I walked in the room and felt this element of, like, this is who I am kind of thing. And the last thing is I love that I'm able to give love. I spent my whole life just being terrified of, love. I didn't know how to give it to anyone else because I didn't give it to myself. Whereas now I feel like I just can give love to anyone.
Can you receive love?
Yeah.
Nice.
I think so. Yeah.
Maybe I'm asking the wrong person. Listen, I'm so grateful for your time today. This has been a really special conversation, and I'm really grateful for it. Can you tell people where they can find you? Because I'm absolutely positive they're going to want a bit more. So where can they find you on socials and things like that?
So at the moment, I'm building up a website, but I'm on Instagram at I am Lauren White. And that's, to be fair, that's the only social platform. I deleted every other social platform, to be honest. I'm trying to limit myself to not get too into it. I mean, I think it's important, but I also feel like one is enough. Yeah. And you can find me there. You can DM me. I've got a link tree up there if you wanted to book my services. Like, all of that stuff is there. But I'm trying to limit my time on the internet pretty much.
It sounds very, very wise. After watching The Social Dilemma, I nearly burned all technology in the garden. That was probably the worst horror film I've ever seen. That was
mad.
It was insane.
And it's true.
I know. That's the bit. And it was terrifying. It really was terrifying. Thank you so much for today.
Welcome.
I'm really grateful, and let's hope this is the start of a wonderful friendship.
This is.
All right, Lauren, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.